Valerie Hector. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a beaded triangle stitch sphere, otherwise known as an icosahedron, one of the 5 Platonic solids, meaning basic geometric structures first identified by Plato many hundreds of years ago. Okay, super simple to make one of these. Each icosahedron has 30 beads only, and all you do is you create triangles, okay, organized into sets of 5 here, like stars. It's like you're creating 5-pointed stars. Super simple. Now, where was beaded triangle stitch first invented? As far as I know, and hey, I could be wrong, in China. How do I know? I collected these beaded worry beads in the form of beaded icosahedra in China, in Beijing, many years ago, like 25 or 30 years ago. Back when I was going to China, I used to see older people walking down the street with their hands behind their backs, and they were holding on to 2 worry beads and rubbing them against each other as a kind of a method of contemplation, okay? Or maybe eliminating worry, okay? Now, the beaded varieties of worry beads in China are incredibly rare. These date to, I don't know, 100, 120 years ago, something like that. They're fragile. They're made of brown seed pod beads stitched with wire, okay? I don't know how I got so lucky as to find these in Beijing, but I was going to Beijing before all the tiny little curio shops got torn down to make way for much bigger buildings. So this is where I learned beaded spherical triangle stitch, okay? Or to make the beaded icosahedron. I found this pair in China. I came home and reverse engineered them. Not hard, any beader could do it, okay? Now in this video, I'm using sterling silver beads, okay? Oxidized, unoxidized, oxidized. I will put the sizes of these beads in the show notes along with their dimensions of the structures that they create. This is so easy. You're going to love this technique, okay? See you in the next video. Okay, the way I see this structure, there are 3 rows. This is row 1. It has 10 beads arranged in 5 triangles, okay? And I call these vertical beads spokes, like the spokes of a wheel, okay? There are 5 spokes. I call the horizontal beads rungs, like the rungs of a ladder, okay? So we got spokes and we got rungs, all right? Everything begins with a triangle of 3 beads. So row 1, we finish building row 1, and then we build row 2. With row 2, we add 10 more beads, and then we create row 3. We start row 3 by adding 5 rung beads. Then we finish row 3 by adding 5 spoke beads, okay? But you'll see. So the first step is create a triangle of 3 beads. I'm using sterling silver beads here that I've oxidized myself. They're about 6 millimeters long by about 4 millimeters wide. I'll put some links in the show notes that tell you, hopefully I can tell you where to get these without having to oxidize them yourself, but I can't guarantee. I do oxidize these myself. All right, so let's start building row 1. Already 1 triangle is in place, and 1 bead is in place for the second triangle. So we're just going to add 2 beads, right? And then we're going to go back through the spoke bead we just came out of. For row 1, we're only building off of spoke beads. For row 2, we're building off of rung beads, but you'll see. For row 1, we always build from a spoke bead. All right. So I'm putting the needle through this spoke bead here to get into position to create the 3rd triangle. We're just going to add 2 beads. And go through the spoke bead we just came out of. And then pull. Okay, pull kind of tightly. You can reinforce as you go, or let's reinforce really at the end of row 1. Go down through the next spoke bead You could also go up. Doesn't matter which direction. All you're doing is building rings of 3 beads. All right. Do it however makes sense to you. There are many ways to build a beaded icosahedron. And I'm just showing you the way that I feel is easiest. Okay, we're going to navigate over. Well, we'll navigate over through this bead. Okay, to get into position to finish the 5th ring. 2 of the beads are already in place. They're both spoke beads, okay? So let's go up through this spoke bead here. Go down through this spoke bead here, and then pull. All right, what's left? Just 1 rung bead is left. All right, so we're going to go up through this spoke bead, like this, down through this spoke bead, and pull. Now, the best thing to do at this step is to stop and reinforce. I'm just going to reinforce a little. You might want to reinforce a lot, especially if the holes in your beads are kind of large, right? Why reinforce so much now? It just makes it easier to build rows 2 and 3. That's all. Okay, so we're going to start row 2 from a rung bead. Go through any rung bead you want. Okay, so we finished this here. We've done some reinforcing, and you know that you're going to do a lot more reinforcing on your own. And now we're going to do this. In this row 2, we add a total of 10 beads to form 5 triangles, always building from a rung. All right, so let's add 2 beads. And let's go back through the rung bead that we just came out of. Go like this. Okay. And pull. Beautiful. Okay. Now let's build from the next rung bead, which is this one or this one. It does not matter which one you build from. Our job now is to navigate over to, let's just say this rung bead here. Okay. How to do that? I'm going to go up through this spoke bead, down through this spoke bead, and over through this rung bead. Okay, however you can get there is fine. However you want to navigate. You know that we only stitch from one bead to another bead. We don't stitch across empty spaces. Why? Because that would leave kind of an unsightly thread. And we want our icosahedron to be clean. All right, now go through this rung bead, get into position to build the 2nd triangle in row 2. Add 2 beads. Go back through the same rung we just came out of, like this, okay, and pull. Now, we want to navigate over to this bead here. And we could also go to this one, but whatever, let's go through this one. So I'm going to go up through this spoke bead, down through this spoke bead, over through this rung bead, okay? And by now, I'm sure you're getting the hang of this. You will need to refer to any video. If you make this structure once or twice, you'll understand. All right, now let's add 2 beads here. And let's go back through the rung bead we just came out of, like this, and pull. All right, we're going to navigate over to this rung bead here. Going to go up through this spoke bead, down through this spoke bead, and over through this rung bead. So let's do that. Up through this spoke bead, down through this spoke bead, and over through this rung bead. All right, let's add 2. beads. If ever you're not sure which bead you should go through, play this game called Ask the Beads. You know you're forming triangles. There's only so many beads you can go through to form a triangle. Bend the thread down, pull it into place, and the beads will tell you to go through this bead here if you're wanting to create a triangle. All right, there we go. Beautiful. Now we have only one more triangle to add for row 2. I'm going to go up through this rung bead, spoke bead, down through this spoke bead, and over through this rung bead. Okay. All right, let's add 2 beads. And go back through the rung bead that we just came out of. That's this one. All right, and here again, row 2 is done, but it's a really good idea to do some more reinforcing at this point, okay? I would reinforce until things are fairly tight. Let me just, for now, I'll just do a tiny bit of reinforcing. It's good if you're using these sterling beads and the holes are getting full of thread. It's a good thing, okay? Now I'm going to switch to using this one because it's already reinforced. So I'm going to set that one aside here. And what we're going to do now is create the first half of row 3. The first half of row 3 will have us adding 5 rung beads here, as you see here. And we're going to add them in the open spaces between 2 triangles, okay, like that. Whoop. Well, you get the idea. So we're adding 5 rung beads, okay? And again, we're going to be navigating around the structure in any way that we can. Doesn't matter how we do it, okay? Oops, no, let's not get this one. I'm picking out a new needle that has thread attached to it. I'm using a size 10 needle, and you can use any thread that you want. I use an old-fashioned kind of thread that I coat with a lot of wax because I like my threads really waxed. Okay. All right, so I'm going to attach the thread into the structure. I generally don't use a knot here. I generally just keep working around, going through beads until the thread catches, okay? All right, and so I think we're pretty well anchored. Okay, so if we want to position this rung bead here, what should we do? What should we do? Well, we're going to stitch from this spoke bead down through this spoke bead and add this one rung bead, okay? Go back through the first spoke bead we just came out of and go down through the second spoke bead we just came out of, okay? Now you see the nice dome structure starting to form. All right, here's where we're going to add the next rung bead. We got to get it in this open space here. So let's go up through this spoke bead. Let's go down through this spoke bead. Whoop. And let's pick up this rung bead. Go back through the first spoke bead we just came out of. Go back through the second one we just came out of and pull. All right, so we're getting a beautiful dome shape forming. It's going to look really much like this when we're done. All right, now we're going to add the third rung bead in this open space here, okay, between these 2 spoke beads. So let's go up through this spoke bead, down through this spoke bead, And let's pick up this rung bead here. All right, let's go down through this. Whoop. This spoke bead here. And we're navigating over to get into position to add the fourth rung bead, which will, I've got to snip this tail, which will sit right in this empty space here. So let's go up through this spoke bead, go down through this spoke bead, and let's pick up this rung bead here. Go up through the same first spoke bead, the same second spoke bead, go down, and only one rung bead left to add. Okay, here it is. Let's go up through this spoke bead here, down through this spoke bead here, and let's pick up the rung. All right. And so now we've added all 5 beads in the first half of row 3. And this is what it looks like. Okay, this is one that's medium well reinforced. It's not perfectly reinforced, but it creates a beautiful kind of bowl shape or a dome shape. Okay, now there are only 5 beads left to add to finish off row 3, and we build from rung beads. Okay, what we're adding to finish off row 3 is 5 spoke beads, adding from the rung beads. Okay, so let's get into position to go through a rung bead. Any rung bead, doesn't matter. And the first, to the first rung bead, we're going to add 2 spoke beads. Okay. And let's go back through this same spoke bead here. Great. See how we have formed a nice star here? Only one bead is missing here. And we'll add it in just a minute. Now we're going to navigate over to this rung bead here, right next door. And we already see the second triangle is partially formed, okay, from this rung bead and this one spoke bead. So we're just going to add 1 spoke bead, all right? And then go through this spoke bead here, go through this rung bead, and see we have created 2 of the triangles in the bottom half of row 3, which has 5 triangles in all. It's this, which is a mirror image of where we began here. Okay, now only 3 beads left to add. We can add them from anywhere we want. I suggest adding them from a rung bead for probably the maximum stability, I think. So go through this rung bead here, right? And so by adding one more bead here, we end up completing this star. Okay, like this. Whoop. Again, just create triangles in stars that have 5 spokes and 5 rungs, okay? Now we want to navigate over to this bead. You know, we could also build from here, but let's do what I suggested in the beginning. Navigating over to a rung bead. This one here. So we still have to go through this bead. Navigate over to this rung bead. And let me show you a different way to just keep building. Go up through this spoke bead here, add 1, go through the same rung bead, okay? And what do you see here? What do you notice? All 5 spokes are in place, okay, that complete this structure. All we have to do is circle around them to make sure that each triangle is closed. There's no right way and no wrong way. You just want to close up all of your triangles here, okay? Make sure they're all closed, okay? Now, sometimes some of them may want to fall down, okay? That's all right. That just means they're not well reinforced here. Row 3 needs to be reinforced, okay? And I would also reinforce the other rows too, just to make sure I have a nice firm structure. All right, but that's all there is to it. And congratulations, you've made your first beaded icosahedron in spherical triangle stitch. Thank you for coming by, and I'll see you in the next video. Please subscribe.